Hi everyone, thanks for coming today. We're pleased to have Mary Roach visit us as part of the Authors at Google series to talk about her latest book, Bonk, the curious coupling of science and sex. Mary's other books include bestsellers such as Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers, and Spook, Science Tackles the Afterlife. Her writing has appeared in numerous publications such as Salon, GQ, Vogue, and the New York Times Magazine, and she's recently been called the funniest science writer in the country by the New Yorker. Bonk is certainly an entertaining look at one of the most alluring of all scientific subjects, sex, and having had a chance to read through it earlier, I'd just like to mention, make sure not to gloss over the footnotes, or we'll be missing kind of a lot of the interesting stuff that's going on. So we'll have time for questions afterwards. I'm assuming you guys have a lot of questions, and just as a quick reminder, if you have any questions, please use the microphone we have set up so that the video conference offices and people on YouTube can hear you, and be much appreciated. So with that, let's please welcome Mary to Google today.
I wrote a book called Stiff that possibly some of you are familiar with. And Stiff was a book about, yay! Stiff was a book about, the subtitle is The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers. So I was writing all about kind of post-mortem careers. And strangely, this book did fairly well. And consequently, in the intervening 4 or 5 years, people keep saying, oh man, how are you going to top cadavers? How are you going to top, what are you going to do next? And somebody actually recently introducing me said, and how do you top cadavers? And like I hear it so much, I actually yelled out from the sidelines, Parmesan cheese. It completely threw her off her introduction. I was like a heckler at my own talk. Anyway, so I've gone and written now, I think that I may have topped cadavers, because this is sex. If you're going to try to outdo yourself with death, pretty much sex is the only place to go. So I've gone and done a book about sex research, and specifically not, surveys about sexual behavior and risk-taking behavior and the cultural, sociological stuff, but more the sex labs, actually physiological sex research, which nobody's really written about, which I found kind of fascinating. And the challenge, though, is when I do books, I like to go to the lab and hang out, kind of see what's going on, watch. And so I pitched this book saying I was going to go, hang out, watch. And then I contacted these researchers, and they said, basically, are you nuts? You can't come in here when we have a subject that would be A, awkward, B, unethical, C, against the subject's review board rules. So sometimes what they say is, well, why don't you come and volunteer as a subject? Which was not always what I wanted to hear. But in a couple of cases, I actually did that. And particularly, most notably, the Dr. Deng chapter. Now, this was a guy who I came across who had pioneered this 4-dimensional ultrasound technique where you'd have a 3-dimensional image, say, of puckering lips, or he had done one on his own erecting penis. And there's a reason why you would need to do this. It's like a 3-dimensional motion picture, ultrasound footage, which is very useful, say, for a surgeon who is going to do surgery on a fetal heart, or someone doing a cleft palate surgery would need to see how the musculature of the lips is working. So it is a useful tool. And the actual documentation of sexual intercourse, I'm not entirely sure what the application here is. He mostly just wanted to see whether it could be done. So I sent him this letter when I heard that this was his next project. I sent him an email, actually. And I said, I'd like to be there at this historic undertaking. And he said, well, he wrote back, Dear Ms. Roach, you are welcome to interview me in London. However, to arrange a new inaction would be very difficult. That's my favorite euphemism for sexual intercourse. An inaction would be very difficult, mainly due to the difficulty of recruiting volunteers. However, if your organization is able to recruit brave couple for study, I would be happy to oblige. So my organization gave this some thought. My organization called its husband. Said, said, you know how you haven't been to Europe in 25 years? Maybe, yeah, we should take a trip. All I can say is if you want to have an interesting life, you should say, sure, I'll do it, before you've given a whole lot of thought to what it is you're agreeing to. And then by the time you realize how badly you don't want to do it, it's much too late. So off we went, and I'll save the gory details for the book. You can read all about it in the book. It really wasn't all that gory. It was very strange. It was kind of was more like one of those hospital medical procedures that you have to get through. You know, you go, and it's that sort of surreal reality of the doctor's office where you go in and they make you put on a little Johnny, which they did. They had us wear little Johnnies, and then you know, you never know what's going to be expected of you next. You know, the doctor might say, so I'm going to be putting my gloved finger up your rectum, and you go, oh, okay, because it's the doctor's office, and you just, you know, you do it because they tell you what to do. So we just kind of went through it, and it was very clinical. And at one point, Ed said, my husband Ed, the saint of the universe, said, well, just sort of joking, trying to lighten the mood a little bit, where's the soft music and the candlelight? And Dr. Dang actually said, looked very crestfallen, and then he said, well, oh, wait. Oh, on my laptop, I have the soundtrack to Les Mis. So I said, no, you know, it's okay. It's all right, never mind. So there you go. Actually, I think equally embarrassing, I mean, even with your pants on, who's this guy? Hi. Hello. Sorry. Okay. It's you. Okay, even with your pants on, sex research can be a little... embarrassing. This is really great. Wow. Okay, sorry. Moderately distracted. I rely heavily on this miraculous process called interlibrary loan, whereby you go to the public library, or actually you can do it on the internet, and you tell them what book or obscure journal article you want, and lo and behold, they get it for you, and you go and pick it up. But the thing is, they have, under my name and my library card number, a whole file of all the things that I've requested. And this is going back to Stiff, so it has, you know, gunshot wounds and the principles and practice of embalming and the chemistry of death. And then on top of that, you know, now there's journal article titles like, I wrote a couple down, Phantom Erection After Amputation of Penis. So yeah, I'm just picturing, you know, these people in the library going, oh God, now where is she going? And they don't really know who I am or why I'm requesting all this book. Oh, another one, this is a personal favorite, Sexual Intercourse as a Potential Treatment for Intractable Hiccups. In this article, you learn that unattached hiccupers are advised that masturbation might be tried. I just love the term unattached hiccupers. And then another favorite, vacuum cleaner use in autoerotic death. And they don't mean to tidy up afterwards. I had a slide here of a guy with this ridiculous guy with a vacuum cleaner and an incredibly long hose, and I was going to show you that. It was like, I think it's sort of one of those vacuum systems where the hose comes out of the wall, or anyway, but it's, you know, it's just... Sorry, we don't have the slides. Okay, I'm going to, just to give you a little flavor of the book, in case you're not familiar with my books, I'm actually going to read a footnote for you. It's one of my favorites. Okay, so this is a footnote. It's this chapter that has to do, well, there's a discussion of rectal electroejaculators, which you'll find out about it in the book. But this is why I stumbled onto this footnote. Okay, I came across a journal article titled "Rectal Foreign Bodies: colon being the punctuation." Case reports and a comprehensive review of the world's literature. And in this article, there was a list of objects that doctors have removed from rectums over the years. And I extracted some highlights. A frozen pigtail. This was one of 7 female cases in a total caseload of 202. A bottle of impulse body spray. And this was, quote, incarcerated, that's the term they used, incarcerated inside a 37-year-old lawyer. I thought it was interesting that the only person's occupation that was mentioned was the lawyer. They, for some reason, felt the need to say it was a lawyer. I don't know why. A parsnip. A plantain, parentheses, with condom. So you never know what you're going to catch from a plantain. A dull knife, a cattle horn, a salami, a jeweler's saw, and a plastic spatula. Multiple holdings in the same rectum are listed under the heading collections. These include several that could pass as still life titles. For instance, oil can with potato, 2 apples, and 402 stones. And then several that probably could not pass as still life titles. Umbrella handle and enema tubing, and lemon and cold cream jar. And then finally, one that suggests a quiet evening in the Biltmore. Spectacles, suitcase key, tobacco pouch, and magazine. I don't know how they got it in there, or what circumstances, I don't know. But so be it. So when people hear that I'm writing a book about sex research, I got a kind of an interesting response, which was often people would say, specifically the physiological side of it, arousal and orgasm and intercourse and all that. They'd say, well, why would we need to know anything else? I mean, don't we already know everything? And why would you study that? And it's kind of like, to me, it's sort of like saying, well, why would you study the esophageal sphincter? We all know how to eat. I mean, it's a bizarre topic to study as a scientist because it is. Most people think of it not as physiology and biology, but as something sort of very personal and intimate. And to bring the two together creates some very bizarre scenarios. But there are actually reasons to be studying these things, and there are mysteries that remain unsolved. And I thought I would mention a couple of them. There's a chapter in the book it's called "The Princess and Her Pee," and it's about a woman who historically had her clitoris surgically moved closer to her vagina because she believed that the reason she couldn't have an orgasm during sex was that her clitoris was too far away. And this was Napoleon Bonaparte's grandniece, of all people. And she seemed to display the same kind of drive and ambition that her great-granduncle did, because she did this big study, got 243 women, measured the distance, and then interviewed them about their sex life and found a correlation, and was so convinced that this was the reason she was not having a great time in bed that she actually had a surgeon do this operation on her. Side fact here, her husband was gay, possibly contributing factor to Marie's problem. However, she did have an affair with the Prime Minister of France, and that was problematic too. So anyway, and then I mentioned this to someone, and they said, well, yeah, but what's the take-home application here? We're not going to. By the way, it didn't work. The surgery didn't work. So why would you study this? And I did actually find one practical application. Possibly, you could. I talked to a transgender surgeon who builds. They're called neoclitorises for men who are becoming women, and takes a little bit of just a little piece of the frenulum, and uses that as a clitoris. The frenulum being the most sensitive part of the penis, that and the testicles. The whole rest of the penis you could throw away. That was actually a line somebody told me. The whole rest of the penis you could throw away. Anyway, I said to him, where do you place, do you place, since you have the liberty of placing it however close you want, do you place it a little closer than nature might? And he said, oh, no. My patients they just want to look normal. I said, well, I don't know, you might want to, move it a little closer. And that was the end of our email correspondence. I get that a lot. Let's see, what else was I going to talk to you about? Okay, here's another. This was sort of astounding to me that this is still not known for sure. This is this phenomenon called upsuck. It's actually also called insuck historically, but I like upsuck so much better that I chose to call it upsuck. Upsuck is this phenomenon where it's believed that the contractions that happen during orgasm serve to suck up the semen and sort of deliver it speedily to the egg, thereby boosting the odds of conception. And this was believed to be the case for centuries. And so, in fact, physicians, if couples were having trouble getting pregnant, the physician would say, take the guy aside and say, it's essential that your wife have a good time in bed. You've got to. There was actually a quote. There was a Empress Maria Theresa from the Habsburg Empire, and her physician, the royal court physician, said to her, I am of the opinion that the vulva of your most sacred majesty be titillated for some time before intercourse. So it was actually something that was, it was advice that was given to couples. The woman has to have the same kind of release that the man does. Then, of course, during the course of history, it was discovered that, in fact, no, you don't have to have that to get pregnant. Sadly, this must have been a wonderful couple of centuries. But interestingly enough, in Denmark, the Danish Pork Production Board has found that if you sexually stimulate a sow while you're artificially inseminating her, you will have a 6% increase in your farrowing rate, meaning the number of piglets that is produced. So the Pork Production Board, pork production being their goal, the more pigs, the better, they actually devised this 6-point sow stimulation plan. And I was going to show you a little bit of number 3. And it's really, so they've got the farmers doing some of the things that the boar would do. And it's not what you think. They're not, they're making out. Or it's because the boar's courtship tactics are quite different from the human being. But there is one step. They actually deleted this step from the poster. It's in the video. They sent me the video where they actually have they show you this very strapping, handsome, blonde Danish guy in a white coat, and he's actually lying on the sow, and he's reaching underneath and manipulating her teats. And I was interested to learn that there actually are other species that use breast manipulation and foreplay. The pig and the human are the only ones. That was fascinating. And pigs, lacking hands, the boar would use his snout. A lot of this is done with the snout. So anyway, but that it is actually something that artificial inseminators do. And so I got interested. I went off on this whole tangent in the chapter to find out, has anybody determined whether this plays a role in conception in humans? And Masters and Johnson, actually, God love them, did this unbelievable study where they brought women into the lab and they had a little cervical cap that they put, and in that cervical cap they put simulated semen. They installed that on the cervix, so it's right there, ready to be sucked up. And then in that material they put it was a radio-opaque substance, so it would show up on an X-ray. And then they put the women in front of an X-ray, device. And then had them masturbate, and then looked at the X-ray to see if there was evidence of the stuff being sucked up. And they didn't find evidence of upsuck. So they became upsuck skeptics, which is also fun to say, upsuck skeptics. But that study actually has been criticized by people who believe in upsuck, saying, well, the suction cup would have prevented, the cervical cap would have prevented suction from happening. So it remains a bit of an open question. And if you ask fertility experts, they go, God, I've been doing fertility for 20 years, and I can't answer that question for you. I really don't know. And I said, well, why don't you guys study it? And he said, well, first of all, you need a large population because since you can get pregnant without orgasm, that would expand the subject pool you'd need to have. And he went yada, yada, yada. And then he said, and honestly, for people who are trying to conceive, the last thing they want to hear is, gee, if you had a few more orgasms, because by the time it becomes sort of work to try to get pregnant when you're not able to. So, but the point being, this is still something that science really doesn't know, and you'd think that it would be, something we would have figured out by now. And now you may be wondering, how do you make simulated semen? I actually came across no less than 3 recipes for simulated semen in various research papers. My favorite was one that actually had, at the bottom of a recipe, it'll say yield, 2 dozen cupcakes or whatever. This one actually said yield 1 ejaculate. So it was basically cornstarch and water. I like to frighten my publicists by regularly making suggestions for nifty marketing ideas. I said that we should do a cookbook based on the recipes in my books, because in Stiff we had mellified man, ballistic gelatin, and placenta pizza. And now in this one we've got the 3 semen recipes, and I believe there's testicle consomme also. She didn't write back, nor did she write back when I had contacted her regarding my plan to do a special scratch and sniff edition of Stiff. Yes, she knows to just ignore me. Let me see what else. The other thing people often ask about is what surprises were there in the course of doing the book? What did you come across that surprised you? So I'll tell you a couple of those. Male multiple orgasm, I didn't know that was a possibility. In fact, in 1989, there was a team of researchers at SUNY Downstate that interviewed 21 men who actually said they regularly have this, do this, experience this. And some of them had always been able to, and others had sort of stumbled upon it accidentally, and they gave the case of a skeet shooter who had continued thrusting on behalf of his partner, his wife, and then, lo and behold, had another orgasm, at which point he exclaimed, and this is in the journal paper, he exclaimed, "Doubly," which is the term for hitting 2 clay pigeons with 1 load of shot, which is apparently an event even as rare as male multiple orgasm. And I have a whole chapter that has to do with orgasm research. I won't go too deeply into it, but I'll just say that I was fascinated to learn it's actually a reflex of the autonomic nervous system. And it's an interesting reflex because there are so many different triggers. There are the obvious triggers that we all know about. Then there are triggers like Alfred Kinsey encountered a woman who would have an orgasm if somebody stroked her eyebrow. There was a woman who would have orgasms followed by a mild epileptic seizure when she brushed her teeth. And it wasn't the toothpaste, and it wasn't stimulating her gums. It was the action of brushing her teeth, and it would happen quite regularly. And you'd think she would have been like, "Yee-haw," with the best oral hygiene in the world, but in fact, she thought she was possessed by demons and switched to mouthwash for her oral hygiene. So it was sad. There was a case study of a Saudi woman who was having up to 30 just spontaneous orgasms throughout the day. Just they would come upon her, and she's not doing anything, and it was troubling for her. They referred to her as she had stopped practicing regular religious rituals and visiting holy shrines, which is understandable. I interviewed a woman who thinks herself to orgasm. This is woman Kim Ayers, who it took her 2 years to learn it. And it takes her about a minute. And I said, we actually had dinner. And then I said, we were in a sushi restaurant. I said, well, could you do it right here? And she said, yeah, I could, but I'd rather wait till we're outside. So we sat on a bench, and you would never know what she was doing, really. And I said, so do you do this all the time? And she said, no, usually when I get home, I'm too tired. She said the last time she did it was on the Disneyland tram. I don't know, yeah. Okay, I'm going to read you one more footnote before I shut up and take some of your questions. This is a footnote. It kind of just gets at that point that I made earlier about how sex research, for the people who do sex research, sometimes it's just very awkward to present their findings or to undertake the studies, and also sometimes even to present the findings. Not prevent the findings. Okay. I keep looking for the little man to come back. Okay, this is about a British researcher named Giles Brindley, who is quite well known. He's retired now, but at the time he was fairly well known. And at a 1983 urology conference, Brindley delivered a lecture about a new impotency drug, papaverine, which produced robust erections when injected directly into the penis. He began by showing his audience, a group of around 80 urologists and their wives, many en route to the conference cocktail party and dressed in formal attire, a series of slides of his own penis after various dosages. He then revealed that 5 minutes earlier he had injected himself with papaverine. He pulled the fabric of his tracksuit tightly against his hips to reveal the outline of his medicated member. Not satisfied, he then pulled down his pants, revealing, in the words of eyewitness Lawrence Klotz, quote, a long, thin, clearly erect penis. Klotz's account of the event was published in British Journal of Urology International in 2005. And this is another quote from Klotz. Brindley paused, seeming to ponder his next move. The sense of drama in the room was palpable. They then said with gravity, I'd like to give some of the audience the opportunity to verify the degree of tumescence. With his pants at his knees, he waddled down the stairs. As he approached the audience, erection waggling before him, 4 or 5 of the women in the front rows threw up their arms in the air and screamed. The screams seemed to shock Professor Brindley, who rapidly pulled up his trousers and terminated the lecture. So, on that point, I will terminate my own whatever this is and take. Thank you. And I would love to have questions from anybody who dares to bring a. Surely somebody has a question. What usually happens at these talks is that no one has a question for about a minute, and then one person raises their hand, and then it sort of gets the ball rolling, and then there's 25 questions. So I saw somebody's hand.
Hi, Mary.
Oh, hi.
I think we're supposed to stand on the microphone, yeah? So I read all of your books,
hi.
and hello.
Sorry.
I've read all of your books, and I think they're great.
Thank you.
And I'm curious, I realize that the subject matter is significantly different. So accepting the subject matter, how your research sort of differs for each of your books, or if it doesn't differ at all, if it really is all interlibrary loans and begging and pleading with researchers.
It is mostly begging and pleading and interlibrary loans. Those are the two key components. Wheedling researchers and tracking down obscure things. That is the, there's actually a lot of the research that I do I end up not using. So there's a lot of sort of random flailing that goes on, especially when I start a book, because I don't really know where I'm going with it and I don't know much about the subject. So there's a lot of roads that I go down that I don't need to. But essentially, there's also, it's a lot of word of mouth. You call as many researchers as you can and put the word out that you're hoping to find a lab that has something interesting going on in the next few months. So. But it comes down to wheedling and sometimes trips to archives, obscure archives, but interlibrary loan and wheedling, yeah. Hi.
Hi. Is there any truth to the stories about gerbils?
Yeah. I would have thought they would have been. I would have thought they would have been, given that it was a comprehensive list of all. I mean, it was a pretty comprehensive study. Although, I don't know the date of this study. When was the Richard Gere thing? It's possible the gerbils came afterward, but anyway, I didn't see anything on gerbils. So as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Gere's name has been cleared, as far as I can tell. Anybody else? All right, I guess that's it. Thank you.